And good afternoon, everybody. I'm Mark Henderson, the Sunday live media chat that is produced by the South Florida chapter of the National Association of Black Journalists. And today's topic is investigative reporting. We have scheduled four reporters from the TV stations here, in South Florida. We have three of them online as of now, and let me go ahead and make the introductions. First is Bo Beth Yates from Channel Four. Bo Beth has been here. When did you come, Bo Beth?
Last February.
Last
Last February.
February. Okay. So she is TV wise. She is the newbie here. She is native of this area. She came into us from CBS 46 in Atlanta, um, and where she was one of the few journalists reporting live on the streets when the riots broke out in downtown Atlanta after the shooting, the death of a locally unarmed black man. And she was also in charge of a news series which told the stories of veterans in need of help. And one thing that I have not seen you, and you may have done it, and I was not on the station at that time, is not only is she a journalist, but she is a meteorologist.
Yes.
And we're waiting on you to report about this cold weather we have. Not that there's that much cold weather, but I mean that will come up sometime later. Secondly is Patrick Frazier. Patrick, boy, you came here a year after me,
Yeah,
right? 1986. It's
that means I'm a year younger than you.
supposedly. By the way, the second person in that room reporting is that little black cat that everybody sees, little cutie pie there. Um, Patrick's just reported on just about everything I can think of. He's done at least thousands of stories across the country. According to his bio, at one point he had gone to 38 states and 13 countries for Channel 7. Most of you all that watch Channel 7 know that he does the Help Me Howard series for the station. Who's doing that with you now? Didn't Is Finkelstein still there? Finkelstein
Howard's
still
still
there?
there. It's Howard and I, and we've had the same photographer for 18 years. The producer who was with us just left to go to NBC. She was with us for 10 years. You get in there and you get hooked on it. So, yeah, but it's
Yeah.
Howard and I and Johnny and
Oh, okay, so
the
it's still
producer.
Howard. Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Oh, yeah.
And I hadn't seen a bit. And last but not least, Jeff Weinstein down in the corner, Mister Dirty Dining himself. Um, Jeff's been there a while. Like I said, the only newbie here is Bo Beth. Jeff joined Channel 10 back in 1994. Boy, most reporters don't stay,
No.
in one place a very long period of time. But that's a testament
I
to
love
the
it.
two of them that
Trying to find
they've just been around and love the town, love the particular area. Okay, Bobeth, you look like you've stopped, so I am going to go right into asking you. One, how did you get involved in doing investigative reporting?
My first investigative story was actually back, I would say in 2005. I was working in Panama City, and I was the bureau chief of this area in Mariana. And they told me, hey, we know this isn't what you normally do, but we need you to do this investigation. We had gotten a tip from a an inmate that the officers there were, up to some sketchy things. And the young lady that reached out to me, she was like, I have a video. And what happens is if you get arrested, these officers ask you for some sort of sexual favor. And depending if you do it or not do it, you may not go to jail that day.
Hmm.
Um, and so that was my first taste. And I spent maybe about 2 weeks because everyone was skeptical about the claim. And of course, it was one of those where it had ramifications that were huge. And it wasn't just one deputy, it was multiple throughout the actual organization. So the ramification is that the sheriff may know about this, or all these deputies could be violating certain rules and possibly could be arrested. And one thing led to another, and the story literally led to an internal investigation by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, and maybe 23, I think it was, deputies ended up being charged. The sheriff ended up having to step down, and after that, I realized the power that um, we as journalists have, and how important it is to kind of help out and try to find solutions or help right wrongs. So that was my first taste, and from that point, I just went on to whatever city I was in. They would give me the opportunity to do these investigative pieces, and it just kind of led to one thing to another. Speaking of Atlanta, my series that I was doing there was called Fighting for Our Vets, and it was similar um, to the Help Me Howard thing that you guys do now, or they do now at Channel 7. It's more of a veteran called us with a problem, right, and we tried to solve it for them. And someone wronged them, and we tried to help them and fix it. So through that series, I ended up getting veterans almost over $1 million in recovery for things either that was wronged or that they were owed. And so it just, you really see the benefit of your work, because it's real time. Like, you solve a problem, or you help protect people from something. And I think that is where the difference between real investigative pieces, they have implications that you can see. It's not just going to a crime scene and say, hey, tell this is what happened here. This is really impacting people's lives, or changing their lives, helping them know where to go to eat, or helping them solve a problem when someone wrongs them because they didn't have any other recourse. And I think that's when you have real good and investigative work. So for me, I think that's the driving force behind me continuing to do it, and why I like it so much versus getting into weather.
The other one of the other questions is how does your stories comport into the limited broadcasting news demands? I mean, obviously you're not normally running something for 30 minutes or what have you. You're normally you're normally getting maybe 2 minutes out of an investigative report. How do you know how do you put that together?
I think that's the hardest challenge, because you have so many ways you can tell the story in so much detail that you tend not to be able to include because of the time limits that we are given. Um, Part of it is I try to find the most important things, what we cannot tell without. And so once I start narrowing it down, that's what I'm using. Okay, if I take this out, um, will it still be the same story?
Hmm.
And once I'm able to decipher that, I can sometimes manage to get it down. It's always over the limit they give me, but it's somewhere close. So let's say I'll get 230 or 2, I'll make it to 230. And I have been blessed where the stories have been so good that the management is on board. So they'll give me the extra time I need, versus them coming back and saying, you definitely have to cut. But those only for the investigative story. If it's a general news assignment, they're not giving me that extra time.
No, exactly. No, exactly. Um, what tips can you give to an up and coming reporter that wants to do investigative reporting?
You're always going to get a no. Your original the original response to anything you ask is going to be a no, and you have to look beyond that. Once you get the first no, go to the next, find another source, or go around that individual, find another way, because the first response is always going to be, I don't know what you're talking about, or no, that's not happening. So you have to be that individual that's going to keep pushing and keep looking, because if you don't, you're not going to ever really get to the bottom of whatever it is. And don't be afraid once you get that no. don't be afraid um, to push back and ask them, hey, why am I getting this information, or why do you say this? Because I have this document. Keep looking beyond what the person says.
Sounds good. Well, Beth, thank you much. Stick around until you have to go to your assignment. Probably come back to you next. Patrick Frazier. Again, thanks for being here. I mean, yeah, I beat you by 1 year in terms of service in this community. How'd you get involved in investigative reporting?
Unlike Bobette, it wasn't one story. It was doing stories, and then there'd be an investigative story, and there doing stories that'd be an investigative. And I think when we did the one on the cops and the cartel, where we found out that the 10 police departments had joined together, Janet Reno sanctioned it, to launder money for the drug cartels.
Hmm.
The goal was to catch the drug dealers. But the cops forgot to arrest anybody and just kept laundering money, and the money was piling up, and the police departments were doing it. And that took a while to put together. And that's when I realized this is the way to do it. You can have fun doing this, doing car wrecks and house fires. That gets old. And then that blended into, in 1999, Help Me Howard, helping people. And that requires an enormous amount of investigating, because people are told no by insurance companies, by lawyers, by whoever, and you've got to figure out a way around it to get their problem solved. So it's just a combination of things that go into being an investigative reporter. And as Bobette said, you just got to get used to being told no, but you got to go outside the box. When you're told no, you go outside the box and find another way to get what you want for Help Me Howard. And that's and it involves a lot of investigating. Last week we had one of the stories was a lady whose husband passed away. They had just come from Cuba a couple of years ago. He was a mechanic. She found out after he died that there where he worked, the car dealership, Lorenzo Ford, had a $10,000 life insurance policy on every employee.
Hmm.
She didn't speak English at all. So one of his coworkers helped her. They contacted the insurance company and they said, no, your insurance policy was canceled when he was in the hospital because he wasn't working. He was no longer an employee. And you take that as a no. Well, then you go, okay, fine. Now you do your research. Howard and Steve, who does a lot of Howard's legal research, start digging. You can't cancel an insurance policy without notifying the person who has the insurance policy or the beneficiary or a third party they designated. They didn't notify anybody. So legally they had to pay. And she got the $10,000, which is not a lot of money. But when your husband suddenly dies and you don't have a dime to your name, but there it's investigating, figuring out the law, and calling them and saying, hey guys, you can't do this. You're breaking the law. Then all of a sudden they go, oh, wait a minute. No, we're sending her the money. You misunderstood.
As usual, caught in the act, can't do anything.
I misunderstand a lot, I guess.
Exactly. What does it take to be an investigative reporter?
Hard. You got to think outside the box. I was about to say hard work. Day of news is hard. Thinking outside the box, not accepting no, finding creative ways to get problems solved or to get the information you want in an investigation.
Right. What's the I asked both Beth this, and I asked you as well. How does your story comport into the limited time broadcast news demands? How are you all able to fit all in that needs to be fitted in?
Unlike Bobette, she's probably better organized than me. I put it all in. I write the script. I give it to the editor. We have two editors I work with. And I say, when you get the spine down, call me before you start B-rolling. Then I'll go in and listen to it and see the interviews. And I realize, okay, we can do without that. We can do without that. And then I can get it down to the time that I'm supposed to have it in. But sometimes what you think is really good on paper doesn't translate well on video or into a story. So I do my cutting after they've laid the spine down.
Mm.
And since the editors are young, they don't mind. If they were my age, they'd
Okay.
tell me to take it and go Google it. But
Well, fortunately, you don't have a lot of those old timers around you. You can be the boss
no,
rather
no.
than you know how that goes. What tips can you give to those that want to get involved into investigative reporting?
First of all, love it. If you don't love it, you're not gonna you're not gonna be good at it. And back to just don't take no. Knock on doors over and over. When you're told no, figure out another way. But you have to love it. I love doing what I do with Help Me Howard. If I were still chasing car wrecks, I'd be in real estate by now. But helping people is fun, and I enjoy it. I enjoy going to work every single day.
Can you think of one particular story that stands out in your mind in all the years that you have done this?
Well, the one with all the cops, because they threatened me and all that. The funny kicker to that is we had everything on them. We had Janet Reno's letter. They were convinced they had leaks in the police departments. And after the story aired, because after they threatened me to come to my house at 5 o'clock in the morning and get me, I started calling those cops at home, and they couldn't figure out
Mm,
who my sources were, all this other stuff. So after the stories aired, I called the one guy who told me they were lying to me when they said they weren't laundering money, the police chief. And I said, you know our source is, because you're going to tell me? I said, yeah. I said, it's your dumpster in the back. You guys throw out all the paperwork every day. I just go in the dumpster every night and pick it out.
that
That,
sounds like that sounds like somebody, and I can't think of the reporter now in Washington, who used to go into one of the former secretaries of Kissinger, as a matter of fact, and he used to go into his dumpster. He'd throw it out. The reporter would go in and pick it up, and see exactly what was there. And sometimes there was some embarrassing stuff. So
I
it's
think
called Shredder.
now it is. But I think if I had to pick a favorite, there was a lady in the 2000s, Margaret Daigle, who was dying. She needed a liver transplant. And in Broward County at that time, in Dade, indigent people can get a liver transplant through the
Hmm.
half-cent sales tax at Jackson. In Broward, they didn't have that. And she would call once a week, can you help me? And I said, you're in Broward. There's nothing we can do. I talked to Howard. Finally, after about 5 or 6 calls, she was so sweet and so persistent. I said, let's try. Let's do the story. We're going to get our, what's kicked, but we'll do the story. And we were able to get, I forget her name, a county commissioner. Turns out her son had a liver transplant when he was 18. So she had a connection to that. She helped us get Broward Jackson to help. They would send their team to Broward General. Broward General would perform the operation with the Jackson team. It was $350,000, and both of them agreed to waive all the costs. And after that, Broward did whatever it is they did. And now in Broward County, indigent people can get liver transplants. Margaret lived another 15 years, and every year she would bring me a cake because my mother passed away when I was in college, and she would bake that cake for me every year.
Wow.
But helping her live another 15 years was fun. And we actually did a kidney one last year with someone. But now everybody in Broward who's indigent can get a liver transplant. Of course, you get way at the back of the line because people who have insurance go ahead of you. It's a sad
Right.
fact, but indigent people can now get liver transplants in Broward County.
Well, that's really, really interesting. Patrick, thank you. Obviously, stick around. Mr. Weinseer, Mr. Dirty Dining himself, Dirty Dining himself.
Mr. Gator.
Yeah, exactly. We know Jeff has been here a while. He came here back in 94, and he's been doing these Dirty Dining things for how long have you been doing the Dirty Dining now?
We've been doing them for 16 years. It was only supposed to be for ratings, one book. Um, and here we are 16 years later. It's just, it's popular. People can relate to it. And you could have the smallest violation. It's really just the reaction on the other side of the people. When you show up, they are caught off guard. And, it's a simple question. Had the inspector not come here, we didn't start this. Bob Mayer was doing it back in the 70s.
Hmm.
at TVJ. Um, but it's fun. I mean, it started off, we had done, I was watching the Today Show one morning, and there was a young girl who did a school project where she tested ice around the Tampa Bay area, and I was like, "Wow, that's a good idea." So we started that, and that was pretty popular for a book story for ratings. And then my boss is like, "How can we keep this, restaurant?" And I said, "Well, the inspections are available." Um, and it's been 16 years.
Wow, that's a long time. But then again, there's a whole lot of dirty restaurants around. So, and I mean, I normally depend on your reporting, and then also the reporting in the Sun Sentinel. They do a really decent job of reporting about places that have closed down. Unfortunately, there he is. What's going on, Willard?
Everything's good, man. If Jeff was at my restaurant, I got a construction project going here, man, and lightnings are out where I am. So, I would get a code. I'd get all kinds of code violations.
Don't do that. Don't do that, Jeff. Let me go back to you. How did you get involved in investigative reporting?
As Patrick said, and it's so clear for those of us who've been doing this for a long time, if I wasn't doing what I was doing, I would be in real estate, because the day of news has changed so much. I mean, it's hard for me to believe that a package stolen in front of somebody's house and caught on a Ring doorbell has become a TV news story, but that's the way it is. And a colleague of mine named Roger Losi, who's a great reporter, he just the streets are just it's monotonous, it's redundant, and they got to fill time. How I got into investigative reporting is really by mistake. You all had talked about a cast of characters in South Florida prior to us going live on air, and there was a character who is the former supervisor of elections in Broward County named Miriam Oliphant.
Yes, I remember.
I had a good source inside her office, and 300 ballots were found hidden, not counted. And that started a chain reaction of stories on the supervisor of elections office in Broward County. That obviously down the line, everybody picked up on it, but down the line led to the governor, Jeb Bush at the time, throwing her out of office, and our state legislators voting not to allow her back in. And it was just a domino effect with Miriam Oliphant. Besides the ballots, she was hiring people that weren't qualified. She had fired people who were qualified. And that was a totally source driven story. And I got a taste of it, and I liked it, and my bosses liked it. And from there, he said, "Do you want to?" We had for a while we had a segment called Problem Solvers at Channel 10. We did some of that stuff, which is similar to Help Me Howard, and that's how it really started.
Well, that's interesting. I remember that situation very, very, very vividly. Again, we go back to the cast of characters, and that really was a dark cloud over Broward at that particular time. Um, what tips can you give to those that want to get into the investigative reporting business?
I think investigative reporting is, you have to be street smart and street savvy, think outside the box. Um, I I mean, Patrick maybe can, because he gets calls like all the time, and I'm sure Willard does too. I would say 60% of what people tell you is the truth,
Hmm.
or they usually tell you their version of what happened, and then you spend hours digging, and it turns out when you talk to the other side, it's really not what they say. So you really have to. I mean, I can't tell you the number of stories that have come through our desk that are like, "Wow, this is great! I can't wait! I can't wait!" And you spend 3 hours digging, and it's really not what it is. So I
Hmm.
would tell them to not believe everything you hear. And one of the things I always say to high school classes that I talk to is never do stories with people you know, or never do stories with tips from people you know, because it never turns out the way they want the story to turn out.
Hmm.
And it's happened more than once, and I learned my lesson the hard way. But you know, don't take sides. Obviously, we do something. All of us do something. It's really like advocacy journalism, where we feel sorry for the the elderly woman who can't get the driveway done, who's paid the contractor $10,000. So we try not to take sides, but it's hard to do because it could be your grandmother or mother. But just every tip you get, really, really with an open eye, because it's usually 90% of the time when you talk to the other side, it's like, well, maybe that's not the case.
Right. No, exactly. Tell us, you made reference to this before we actually started the live broadcast. Tell us about the restaurant that used to be on 167th Street, which is now, I think, a Dunkin' Donuts.
It's a Krispy Kreme, yes, and a Wawa, and it was the Ham and Eggery, U.S., which was the dirtiest restaurant I've ever been. I think it's the most memorable. I'm not sure it's the dirtiest, but we were talking about the gentleman who owns the place, who had live peacocks in the kitchen while he's making eggs and bacon. And if you've ever been around a bird cage that hasn't been cleaned, there's feathers and seeds, and these were just running around and they're flapping, and that was probably the most memorable. We did have, dirty dining segment too. We have to be careful. We get a list every week, and there's a certain segment, of the 8 restaurants they may shut down an entire state of Florida. 7 of them may be Chinese restaurants. So we did get some backlash from members of the Chinese community that we were targeting, and we were this and we were that. And so, it's not just going, we have to be sensitive, to that as well, because most of the dirty dinings could, to be honest with you, weekly have at least one Chinese restaurant on it. And the Chinese community met with my general manager and, wanted us to lay off, you know what I mean? And so it's something you don't think about, when you watch them or see them. But people take it personally. And when you're dipping into their wallets and their pockets, when you're exposing them, they're not too happy.
No, they're not. Is there any reason why that they come up more than anybody else?
Culture. I think it's a cultural change. I think it's a cultural difference. I think it's a language barrier. They don't understand me half the time when I walk in and start asking questions. So I ask the state, if they don't understand me, how are they understanding the inspector? Oh, we have translators. Okay. Well, how many times have you used those translators? Well, let me look. They get back to 0. We've never used the translator. So it's like, it's I think it's a cultural thing, to be honest with you, and it's
That's just
unfortunate. I mean, I got
no.
pictures. I got pictures just yesterday from inside a kitchen, and I'm going to go and we're going to look. But if the pictures are true to what the pictures are, it's amazing what goes on. And not only that, we get pictures all the time, and of like I got a picture the other day of a woman who says she bit into something and there was a fingernail, an entire fingernail, a fake fingernail. But we can't do that story because I don't know if she planted it there.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, no, exactly. Well, it's interesting, and a couple of the dirty restaurants that have picked, I've at least frequented once, so they're going to be off my they're going to be off my dining list for sure. All right, Mr. Shepherd, how are you today?
I'm doing fantastic, man. It's great to be and see Jeff and Miss Yates and Patrick, my neighbor. We live not too far from each other, and I've admired the work of each of you. Miss Yates is younger than the rest of us, I think, on this particular broadcast, so not quite as long, which is a good thing.
No,
But
she's the rookie out of this
yeah,
deal.
there you go, man. But these gentlemen here, we have a competitive nature about us, but we respect good work and good journalism when we see it. And it's just an honor to be with them because I admire what they have done and are doing for our community.
Well, I appreciate it. That was the reason why I picked all 4 of you, because I know that you all are very professional and do good in the community. For those of you that do not know, that are listening, Willard has been around for a long period of time. When did you come to 6?
You know what? Actually, I have some breaking news. I got a
Oh,
phone call from my news director about a project I was actually working with, what's going on with the Ukrainians and the Ukrainians in our community that we were putting on TV on Friday. And
uh-huh.
she called me to ask me a question about that. But the first thing she said was, "Happy anniversary. Today," which was Friday, "it's your 28th anniversary from when you were
Wow.
in DC."
Wow.
And
Wow.
I'm like, "Really? You kidding
Congratulations.
me?" And she's
You're
like, I'm like, "No." I said, "I thought it was in March." And she said, "No, you were actually hired on the 28th. Don Brown, our mentor, and who went on to be the president of Telemundo,
right.
hired me, Trina, Jackie, Jackie Nespral,
Hmm.
Ari Otzer had been with the network, but had come back here. Carrie Sanders, Don hired all of us. And he was recently honored, and we were very much so honored to be a part of that process, that he was honored in Palm Beach County on Martin Luther King's celebration. So
Wow.
he told me that. I was like, wow, I didn't realize that. And then I thought about it, and I said, yes, that was the day, but I didn't actually go into the air until March, because I
Mhm.
moved. I lived in a Grove. If you guys remember the Mayfair Hotel, they put me up
Oh,
in the
yeah.
Mayfair Hotel.
Yes.
I lived there. So that's how it was. So it's 28 years, man. And you and I
Wow.
almost that whole time.
Wow. That's interesting. You're creeping up on me because December was 31 for me with the airport. So it's been a little, it has been a little while. For those of you that are listening and viewing this, Willard has the distinction of not only being a journalist but being an attorney, and also a Gulf War fighter pilot. I mean, he's been, as a member of the bar, been around a long period of time. Excuse me. He came in from CBS WJW in Cleveland, Ohio. I know you're glad to be here right now because of the weather up there. It's kind of burr, but he also was a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Air Force and Reserve. Here's a little factoid. His A-10 squadron was the first Air Force Reserve fighter unit to ever go into combat. And during the Gulf War, he flew 52 sorties over Iraq and Kuwait. So he has knowledge. He's also, too, was the first Air Force pilot to fly the Soviet MiG 29 fighter. So there is definitely a long history with Willard, and again, I have been proud over the years to know him. I know him to be fair, just like I know the other three of you all on this call to be fair in your reporting. Excuse me. And I know normally when I do get calls, I try to be as judicious as possible to help out. What does it take to be an investigative reporter, Willard?
Well, these days, as my colleagues will tell you, it's harder for us to get the time to do it. In addition to what the pandemic that thrust a lot of us into more of the daily news operation and a reduction of staffing and those types of things, there is what I say is everybody wants to see a touchdown immediately. In football terms, nobody wants to see a grinded out 15 play drive to get to the end zone to score.
Right.
And therefore, this seeing police body cameras and surveillance video has changed all of what we do in so many realms. I'm sure so many times that Patrick gets an idea about a story and somebody brings you this, or we find out through our own research or the court records. And what at the end of the day are we looking for? And that's something that's going to be compelling television at home. And the people that we work with, many of them don't understand the legal process, the journalistic process that it takes that you have to go through to put what Patrick does on television. Or, when it comes to the product that Jeff has done. Hey, look, like he just said, you can get a tip and there might be some incredible pictures, but the responsibility he has to make sure that he's not going to defame a company and expose his own company to that type of legal ramification, it takes a lot of legwork and being very, very specific. And it's a big challenge in a world where there's more and more news. Our products are on more and more and more. Every time you look up, there's another morning newscast, or we expand it to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And that's a beast that has to be fed. And therefore, our jobs in our newsroom is to make sure that we're doing that in a very careful and very tedious manner. And a lot of times, the people that we are dealing with haven't been exposed to that before. And that's a responsibility that we have. And that they certainly take that seriously in terms of listening about that. But that's one of the biggest challenges right now, is just because you got a piece of video and it's going to make people, they go, wow, it's a crazy video, that we have to make sure that we use that responsibly and we do it with the proper vetting, so that we don't put someone on television who shouldn't be on a television in the first place. Or we make sure that we protect our law enforcement officers, that we don't endanger them inadvertently by showing that type of thing. So those are the biggest things that we have to deal with in our world right now, where everybody's looking for an immediate, great story, great hit, and something that we can market. We all want to do it and do it successfully and do it well. And I always say, when we put our names on it, it's got to be legally sound, journalistically sound, and ethically sound. And if you treat people the way that you would want to be treated in that situation, there's no place that Jeff can't go back to and that people say, you know what, man, I'm not crazy about what you put on television, but that was fair. And now we've cleaned up our restaurant. And if you and your family choose to dine here at some time, you're more than welcome, and we'll give you the best service that we can. And the same thing with Patrick and Miss Yates, with what she's been doing when she got here. And that's what the biggest challenge I see right now is being able to do our work while we're going through this changing process in our business with the technology and what the pandemic has done to us.
What advice can you give to those that want to become investigative reporters?
First of all, basically, I say you got to be a great reporter. You have to be diligent about your facts, because a mistake in that area can be catastrophic when you're talking about doing investigative reporting. And I tell people, pick something else that you like, something that you like to do. I mean, I always loved airplanes. So therefore, I went and lived a different life, and bring whatever that life is to reporting, so that you're an expert in that area. The FBI has a Citizens Academy where they take regular people, put them through some idea about what it's like to be an FBI agent. Many police departments have volunteer officers that, you can't arrest anybody and you don't have a weapon or any of those types of things, but they use them for traffic control when there's a parade, those types of things. When you go to do that kind of thing, it gives you a real insight and idea as to what it's like to do that particular job. And the other thing that you do is you meet people and you develop relationships with people. And when you have those relationships, they believe in you, they trust you, and that leads to you finding out things and having information. So therefore, as you know, Mark, except when I'm sending public records requests and there's some maybe legal issue concerning whether or not that is public record here in the state of Florida and those types of things, that's the legal part of me being a bar member using that. Right. The greater part of it is, as with anything, it's about relationships. Because by being an attorney, what happens? The other attorneys, I know the other attorneys. The attorneys, when they have an issue, they reach out. Patrick has done such an incredible job with his franchise over the years that people contact him that when they have an issue. So those types of skill sets allow you to develop the relationships to do the journalism. And there's a way to be able to go about doing that. Like my relationship with you. We love airplanes, man. I'm always talking about
yeah.
I go to Miami
Exactly.
International Airport. every single day of the year. Okay, and just
No,
watch
exactly.
planes go.
And to be
So
honest with you, I appreciate your enthusiasm there. You I think make it easier for us and for yourself because you do know aviation. It's a little harder when you get new reporters that come in and really are not skilled in what goes on in aviation, and you do have to do a little bit more hand holding than we would with you. Not that there's anything
and
wrong.
I'll say, Mark, just as an example on that, I don't want people to think that we're only talking about going to the airport. Like over the last couple of days, you all sent out a message saying, "Hey, look, because of the weather in the Northeast, we're going to have a lot of flight cancellations." Those types of things we put on daily news. But I just did a piece with you guys over the last month where we had a person actually get on an airplane with a loaded weapon and fly it to Miami International Airport
Yes,
on
yeah,
American Airlines.
I
I
remember that.
mean, the height of what happened in 9/11, how is that remotely possible? But during that process, because it was such a sensitive issue, our work with you and your office, our work with the airline, our work with the TSA, our work with the Miami-Dade County Police Department, when I talk about the diligence, I mean, from the time I found out about that and actually saw it in the paperwork, and I actually
Mm,
called the Miami-Dade Police Department and said, "Look, is that what the man really said? I thought there might have been some miscommunication, but there
right.
wasn't." And he actually got on the airplane, and we worked with the Barbados government to do that. That would have been something that I urge people to, and those listening and those journalists moving forward, is that could have easily been something that instantaneously was right for right now. We
Yeah.
can't wait. However, we waited until your office did its diligence, provided us with the video that was necessary to see what actually took place at the checkpoint before we actually put that on television. And so patience is a virtue with that, and developing that kind of relationship, doing a variety of different types of things. When it's a sensitive topic like that, things work better.
Well, I'll put it to you this way: patience is a CYA, and I think know what that is. I mean, because yeah, you don't want to get on too quickly and then have to go back and retract. I mean, obviously the business is competitive. You want to be the first, but you want to be the first that's right, rather than just being, this just being the first. What's the in the about couple of minutes that we have still remaining? Uh, what's the best investigative story you've done, Willard?
Oh wow. Let's see. That's kind of like asking Jeff, what's the one with the restaurant? And I used to go eat that ham and egg place, man. I did the North Miami Beach police officers. That was a popular spot.
Oh yeah, it was good. The
So
food was good.
yeah, we'd be in there all the
Yeah.
time. I would say just recently off the top of my head, everyone here, and I think across the platform, would be familiar in North Miami, not far from where Patrick and I live. There was an autistic man who was in the street that actually had what was a little toy truck, but a
Yes.
police officer thought it was a weapon. There was a man that had his hands up in the air and his feet in the air, and he ended up being shot. If you all recall that,
Yes.
and the officer was the first officer in 3 decades to be charged by the Miami-Dade County State Attorney's Office for a on-duty shooting. That person, Mr. Rijo Soto, ended up going to live in a facility up in Central Florida. His attorney is a person who does incredible work with people who have disabilities. And it turned out that the state of Florida, and these costs might seem astronomical, and they really are, but it goes to the special care that is involved in taking care of a person like this. The state of Florida was paying about $40,000 a month to this facility for him to stay there. But they have a review panel that takes a look at, hey, how are the taxpayers' monies being used? They went and said, we need to trim this back, and they cut it back. So they cut it back to about $20,000 a month. And his lawyer alleges that they attempted to evict him. Well, there's an eviction process in a state. Doesn't matter whether you have a disability or not, but especially there's some specific protections for a person who's got a disability. His allegation is, and what the overall portion of the broadcast is, they developed what he alleged to be a ruse to get him out. And they called 911 saying that he was running around nude, he was destroying the place, he was, a danger to people. You got to send the police here like right now. And, this was up in the Orlando area. And the police started heading in that direction. Well, at the end of the day, it turned out from what you actually obtained for the 911 calls, we obtained the video from inside the building at the time that showed when the person who was the employee that was on the phone saying all of these things were happening, none of that was happening. And when the officer arrived at the scene, the man was Mr. Rio Soto. He basically was being restrained on a mat. When they sat him up and the officer's body camera captured him just in tears. I mean, just the devastation that he had been through with what had happened. And it all turned out to be really an untrue statement about what they were alleging was taking place. And, we hated to do that. The real technical aspects of that, where we had these body cameras that had certain times on them, and this is military and flying stuff. They were in Zulu times, which is the time of the Greenwich Mean Zone near London.
Right.
And they had to all be synced up with the 911 call times to make sure that they were accurate times, along with the video that was in the property. So the editor on that particular story was beside himself because of all the math we had to do to get it done. But at the end of the day, it showed that the call to 911 was basically what the lawyer alleged to be a ruse. And it was heartbreaking because the family was able to see what actually happened to their loved one. As you can imagine, they weren't, they weren't happy about it.
No, I hear you.
That's the latest one like that, that we've had the opportunity to do, and shows how this work can be so important.
Oh, well, that is great. Got a couple of minutes left. I want to go around the table as it were. Bo Beth, I guess you're not on your story yet, right? Jamil, I can't hear her.
Yeah, I'm here, but I'm just waiting in the car.
Oh, okay. Since you've come back, what's the thing you like most about South Florida?
I feel like, especially at my station, there was a lack of non-news stories, maybe like the day-to-day type thing. And since I've come back, I like the fact that they have allowed me to try to do that a lot more, just developing stories that really impact people, not the day-to-day stuff of the shooting and the scene type situations, but more of stories that matter to people and are impacting them. So that I'm really excited about. Not quite excited about the time they're giving me to put these stories together, but still excited of that. That opportunity is there, especially that they saw the need and the lack and are willing to adjust to that.
Okay, thanks, Patrick.
Willard's a real gentleman because he called what the guy did an untruth. See, I'm from North Florida. It's called a lie. Willard's a gentleman. You know what? You were talking about investigative stories. You can't pick one, but what Willard was talking about recent, I got a call from a commander. There was a story we did years ago where the police chief stole $500,000 from the department safe box, whatever it's called. Anyway, I got a call from an officer who despised him and said, "Patrick, you're not going to believe this. Somebody just shot up the chief's house. You got to get over there." This was in the mid 2000s. So we rush over there. We get there, and the photographer I'm riding with, we had the window down. I said, "I swear I just heard." He said, "That was a car backfiring. That wasn't shots." We get there, and the chief is running out of his house. He had just been shot up. So anyway, we do the whole story, whatever, blah, blah, blah. The guy they called to tell me, the officer who he died this week of cancer, had called to tell me they were shooting up, somebody had shot up the chief's house. Years later, he told me he shot it up when he saw the car coming, us coming down the road. He wanted us to get video of the chief coming out in his underwear or something. I don't know. But some of the stories in South Florida, you can't make up.
No, you really cannot. Again, if you want to move to a city where there's characters, yeah, definitely come to South Florida. Jeff,
Are you asking story, or are you asking why we like South Florida?
now why you like South Florida?
Well, obviously, my family is here, so that's where I am. Candidly, I'm liking South Florida less and less as we go on. I think, and I'm not saying that there's a utopia anywhere, but there's really, and it's in every big city, but and maybe we're just exposed to it, but there's just such a lack of responsibility from people on these car chases. I mean, my wife could be on the road and you can hit her car and she could flip over. There's just, and I don't know where utopia is, but I just think South Florida is a little out of control nowadays, to be honest with you. I mean, to the point where I don't let my children go get gas at night and stuff like that. And we may be jilted and jarred because of what we do. We see the worst of everything. But there is a saying in the South Florida TV market that if you can work in South Florida, you can work anywhere. And I think that is definitely true based on the speed of which we do things. You could pull up to a fire, put the mast up, or nowadays live views, be live with absolutely no information whatsoever, and just talk about what you see. And I think, that the breaking news, I think, SVN, let's call it what it is, created something back in the 90s, and we've all followed their formula, for better or for worse. And the journalism, unfortunately nowadays, I call it the Lipton soup journalism, where you add hot water and you have the soup. There's not a lot that really goes into it nowadays, if that makes sense. It's ambulance chasing is what it is. And Patrick, I don't say SVN in a bad thing, but they created, a breaking news thing, and we all follow it. And the speed that we do things in, I think in other markets, if you go to other markets, they don't do theth the way we do in South Florida. So if you can work here, it's probably easier to work in other markets because it's a slower pace. I don't know if that's 100%. Bobeth has been in another market a lot, before. We've been around here a long time, but Atlanta's a big market though, and they have a lot going on. But I don't know.
But South Florida still does it a lot differently than I expected. Not to interrupt you, but it definitely is. It was a weird, like I said, it was been a weird transition. I thought, being in a top 10 market, it's Atlanta 7, so I thought they would function more like a top 10, and it's just been a lot of that ambulance chasing without full details, without developing the story. That's why I say I'm happy they're willing to let me do that, because that is not the norm. My understanding is like you just go, and I'm like, go with what? I don't have any details. I don't have an interview. I'm not going to do a whole package with no details. What? But they've been willing to work with me. So, but you're right. It's completely different than everything I've experienced.
Well, the interesting thing here is that, again, so much has changed within this town, because I can remember back in the days, when SVN was doing that, doing the more, upbeat sort of stuff, and Channel 10 was the conservative station. You did not get all that. I mean, Dwight and
Bishop.
Yeah, thank you. I couldn't think of her name. And Bishop just gave it to you, kind of just gave it to you straight. Well, things have changed somewhat now. I have one more question of you, Jeff, before I go to Willard and wind up. Any fallen iguanas?
No falling iguanas. No.
I'm just looking at your background and it's like, okay,
No.
where, where,
I don't get a good signal inside the house, so I came outside. So we did that.
Well,
And I will also say about South Florida TV, and I think we just, our stations, all of our stations, give us the resources to do what we need to do and do it right. I mean, our assignment desk we have 5 people sometimes on our assignment desk. You know, I need video or something. They put the chopper up with no questions asked. I need to buy documents, no questions asked. I think all of our stations, I mean, they're you know, they'll ask what for and stuff like that. But I think all of our stations really spend and do and have the technology to do the best job that we can.
Exactly. Willard?
Well, the great thing is we live in an incredible metropolis now that, you know, from the Palm Beach all the way down to the Keys, there's 9 million people. So that's a lot, and the growth has been tremendous, which has been tremendous for our business, tremendous for our industry. You know, at MIA, you can get on a plane and go anywhere in the world.
Exactly.
And that's a great thing about being in our metropolis. The downside to it is that we have to deal with what happens in a major metropolis like San Francisco or Los Angeles. We got to deal with the traffic and those types of things. In our line of work, a person who is working in this television market can, you know, work anywhere. Doesn't matter where it is, at the network or any other market. I always say that those of us on this platform here right now, we have the best jobs in television, because at the network level, there's not really hardly any of what we're doing here, except for, you know, premiere programming of a 60 Minutes or Dateline on our side, or 2020, you know, on Jeff's side. Those kinds of things are extremely rare. And when you talk about, when Bobeth talks about, oh, you show up at a scene, hey, our colleagues working for our networks, that when we're working a story where they're also involved, they're standing in front of place saying the same thing every 30 minutes and nothing has happened. Okay. And there's no opportunity to do any real work like this. So I feel fortunate. I think my compadres on this broadcast feel fortunate of the work that we're able to do. And as Jeff mentioned, the resources that we have to do this kind of work in a place where you have this kind of population. And the one thing I want to leave for people who are interested in getting into this type of journalism and expanding it, take a little bit of what Bobeth does. Take some of what Jeff does. Take some of what Patrick does. Find a little bit from everybody that you think is going to work for you. And always have a quest for learning. Because at the end of the day, we're basically all librarians. We just take in what we read and find out and let other people know about it. Right. And be that conduit. And as long as you have a quest to learn, and I try to learn something new every single day from some of the people on this broadcast, when I get a chance to see what they're doing and apply it, then you'll be the best journalist that you can be. And on the day you think you know something, person that thinks they know something, that's the person that don't know anything.
Amen. That is agreeable. Thank you, 4 of you, Bobeth Yates from CBS 4, Patrick Frazier from Channel 7, Jeff Weinseer from Channel 10, and Willard Shepard from Channel 6. Thank you so much to the 4 of you being on this broadcast today. I hope that all of you all have that are listening and watching this got some information out of this. Keep in mind, folks, this is not an easy business. You know, it can be hard, it can be challenging. I know, because I used to be a reporter. But at the end of the day, when you look at these 4 professionals, it does my heart well to know that the profession has not sunk, but it has risen. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
God bless. Have a great day.
All right.